Hello, my name is Daniel Sweetser, and I'm reading from my novel Hope Starts Small. This morning I'm reading Chapter 7, Part 2, Jeremiah Digs. When Frank and his family had lived in Illinois, he had taken his young son Jeremiah outside, and they had cleared the weeds from a small garden patch behind their house. But it wasn't particularly fun for Jeremiah. Frank was cranky and harsh, and so the experience was soured, and he just wanted to go back inside. There's a picture of the two of them sitting beside that small garden patch, and in the picture both of them were smiling. But Frank doesn't remember them smiling much. When they moved to the house in town in New York, there were more opportunities to garden, and Frank was less of a jerk, at least as best he can remember. He and Constance had marked out an area that got decent sun, and they planned to use it for the garden. But in addition, they marked out an area near one side that was designated digging place for Jeremiah and Zoe. Jeremiah made full use of this. He would sometimes ask his dad for help, which Frank gladly obliged, but soon after Jeremiah would set back to work on his own again. He dug deep, to where he could stand in the hole. But whereas Frank had done so without permission and received a rebuke, Jeremiah was doing so with express permission and Frank's beaming smile overhead. Turns out they both really liked digging holes. Jeremiah was particularly interested in finding clay. When he did, he would extract it from the ground and then do experiments where he would soak it in water and try to purify it. He and Zoe would also bring out toys to the garden, and they would play with them both inside and outside the hole. In front of the hole was a pile of extracted dirt that served as a makeshift fort for their toys. And behind the hole was an even larger pile that they would bury toys in as part of some grand adventurous role play. Much to their delight, sometimes little frogs would wander into either the hole or the large dirt pile, and then Jeremiah and Zoe would kindly observe them, like neighbors staring at someone as they move into a nearby house. Here Frank remembers that the kids would smile. They were having a good time. At one point, when Frank had begun to intentionally build a real garden, he had a plan to extract all the sod away from the current plantings, the grapevine, the raspberries, and the first thornless blackberry, in a ring around each, like a moat. It ended up being a bad plan because he hadn't accounted for how much and how often that particular area would flood after sudden rain. And so his work had produced a sort of swamp. There was one particular day when he was watching the kids while Constance was out and about, and it began to rain. Frank and the kids went out, and he tried to make a sort of makeshift canal from the swamp to the nearby road in hopes of draining out the excess water. But the kids decided that the garden served better as a splash pool. And for whatever reason in that moment, Frank didn't mind. The kids got covered in mud, and they were smiling. But this time Frank remembers them smiling the whole time. It wasn't just for the cameras. Eventually Frank reshaped that garden into defined rows with mulch of various kinds covering the planted portions and bare ground beneath. And he did eventually dig some drainage trenches around the garden plot so that excess water made its way off the path. But he left the digging hole alone, and Jeremiah continued to use it. When the family was deciding to move, Frank remembered that Jeremiah was especially upset about having to leave that digging hole behind. He had done so much work in it, and he was not looking forward to having to say goodbye. In the moment, Frank offered a sort of bribe to Jeremiah. He promised him that wherever they would end up, he would let him have a new digging hole, a bigger one. That was enough for Jeremiah, and he was willing to let go. And when the family moved to the barn, sure enough, Jeremiah got his new digging hole. It was behind the goods shed in the blackberry patch, kitty corner to the field. And he and Zoe would wander out there during the summer after they first moved in, and they would dig. Much to Jeremiah's delight, his new digging hole held a wonder that he did not have before. The digging hole had artifacts in it. He found an old bungee cord and many different kinds of rocks. Each thing was to him a special treasure filled with mystery. At one point he found a spoon. He would show these things to Frank with delight, and Frank would celebrate with him. At the same time, although he would never say it out loud, Frank wondered why there was so much garbage buried in that one particular spot. All right, thanks for listening. I hope you have a great day.